Okay, I know that I have talked to you about Quince before in the past, but I truly feel deep down in my soul that I'm gatekeeping information if I don't tell you about them. I have been obsessed with Quince for literally like 2 years at this point. I buy my clothes from Quince, I bought jewelry from Quince, I buy throw blankets, bedding, you name it. And if you're somebody who has ever wanted to upgrade your everyday basics, but you don't want to pay the luxury prices, that is exactly where Quince comes in. Not only is it clothing, but like I said, bedding, cashmere, throw blankets. I personally live in their travel outfits. They have the softest fabrics out there. Also, I've told you about bedding. I have it on my bed, my kids' beds, our guest room bed. Let me just show you. I have talked to you about my bed before and how I call it like my moon cloud because it's so comfortable. Let me just show you. It is so soft, so comfy. They're like thin and nice and like slick, and they're cool because I'm like a hot sleeper, and it just feels like a cloud. Also, they have amazing clothing pieces. I'm talking cozy knits, cashmere, silk tops that are washable, just the best of the best stuff that you literally will find at a department store, but it's a fraction of the price. Because what they do is they cut out the middleman, which remember, I worked in fashion for over a decade. I know all about markups, I know all of the tricks, everything. Quince cuts out that middleman so that you don't have to pay that extra markup. And that's how you're saving. That's how you're getting such a good deal. And I'm actually going to walk you through. Let me actually just show you a couple of the pieces that I own and that I love. This is one of my travel sets. I wear it all the time. It's brown. It's got the matching pant. You've probably seen me in when I'm recording this V-neck sweater. I even have my leggings already on the hanger because I know exactly how I'm going to style it. And shacket. I know it's a weird word. This is so soft, and you can see it has like the oversized buttons, pockets. I wish you could like actually feel these things to see just how amazing they are. So whether it's for me, whether I need to get a gift for somebody, or whether it's something I need to just pick up last minute for like a travel trip thing and I need something, they are like my go-to. And right now you can go to quince.com/Annie Elise to get free shipping and 365-day returns, just in case you don't like it, but I know you're going to love everything. So again, that is quince.com/Annie Elise. Go shopping, get all of the good things. Tell me what you got in the comments because I feel like I need to start adding to cart. All right, quince.com/Annie Elise. 4 children don't just disappear. Not usually. Not without noise or chaos or someone realizing it right away. But in Salt Lake City, Utah, back in November of 2025, that's exactly what happened. Days passed with unanswered calls, unanswered messages, and things that just seemingly indicated that these children, poof, vanished. Now, at first, I will say it didn't seem urgent, just one of those situations where maybe life gets busy, people go off the radar for a little bit, but then enough time went by that this silence really started to feel heavy, wrong even. And that's when someone finally requested a welfare check be done. Now, when deputies arrived at the home, they weren't met with signs of a struggle or anything that suggested that some sort of sudden emergency had happened. I mean, the house looked normal, lived in, like it was a family who was still very much in the middle of their lives. The only problem was nobody was there. No mother, no children, no explanation. I mean, just silence. And as the investigators started to try to understand how a mother and her 4 kids could just vanish without a trace, the case took a turn that nobody expected. Airport surveillance footage would later show this mother walking through the Salt Lake City International Airport with all 4 of her children with her. And they weren't running, they weren't panicked, they were just moving calmly through this terminal and preparing to board a one-way international flight. No return tickets, no plans to come back home. And their route? It took them out of the United States entirely, through Amsterdam, and ultimately landing them in Croatia. And here's the detail that nobody saw coming. The children's father had absolutely no idea. At this point, he didn't even know that they were gone, that they weren't at home. And this left one question that the investigators are still trying to answer to this very day. Where did this mom take her kids? And more importantly, why? Hey guys, my name is Annie Elise. This is 10 to Life. Let's jump right in. Before Elleshia Ann Seymour became the center of an international manhunt, she was really just like any other person, any other mom. Elleshia was a 35-year-old woman who was a mom of 4 kids living in West Jordan, Utah. She was a woman navigating life, relationships, custody schedules, school routines. I mean, really just the everyday, complicated, and yes, sometimes messy reality of co-parenting. Her 4 kids are 11-year-old Landon, 8-year-old Levi, 7-year-old Hazel, and 3-year-old Jacob. Now, 3 of those kids, Landon, Levi, and Hazel, she shared with her ex-husband, Kendall Seymour. And the youngest, Jacob, she shared with another ex-husband, Kurt. And look, while she was navigating these situations, she and both of her exes were under court-ordered custody agreements. So there weren't any sort of informal arrangements, not the whole we'll figure it out as we go type of thing. There were actual black and white legal custody orders. Orders that required her to take the kids to school, orders that required her to return the children to the other parent at a specific time. Because the truth of the matter is, every aspect of a custody agreement, it can be made to fit very specific conditions. So now fast forward, and when Kendall, the father, got a phone call from the babysitter on December 2nd, 2025, saying that his kids hadn't been showing up to daycare, that's when the first real, alarm bell and red flag started going off. He had dropped the kids off to spend some time with their mom for the holidays, for Thanksgiving particularly, something that also was part of their custody agreement. But then after that, nothing. No check-in, no texts, no update, just silence. It wasn't until Kendall got that call that the kid's babysitter thought that they were missing that anybody even thought that something could be wrong. And that's the call that got everything moving in this case. Because Kendall, the father, didn't just shrug off this call. He didn't just say, oh, we'll figure it out, or I'm sure everything's fine, you're overreacting. He did the one thing that any parent would do when someone thinks that their kids are missing. He started looking for answers. I mean, that very same day, on December 2nd, that's when the welfare check was called in. Now, as a matter of fact, it wasn't just Kendall looking for answers. That same day, on December 2nd, the welfare check was called in, but not by Kendall or the babysitter, but it was actually called in by Elleshia's coworkers. They reported that she hadn't shown up for work and that she wasn't answering her text messages. Now, this apparently had been going on since November 29th. So when the officers went to Elleshia's home later that day, that's when they, as I mentioned at the top of this episode, found it unlocked, empty, seemingly normal, but no kids, no Elleshia, and no explanation. Just gone. A family vanished. Now, there was, however, a notebook that was left behind. And I gotta say, in this notebook, there were all kinds of writings just feverishly scribbled down about shredding important documents, getting rid of identifying photos, throwing away her phone and getting a burner phone. Some really alarming things written down. Someone who clearly wanted to get off the grid, destroy personal effects, destroy documentation, and perhaps go undetected. I mean, you don't buy a burner phone for nothing, right? Now, I will say this too. That's all suspicious on its own. And if you're thinking, wow, Annie, a lot happened that day. Usually information doesn't come out that fast all at once. You're not wrong. But that's also not all that happened that day. Because also on December 2nd, Kurt, the father of the youngest child, had a voicemail from Elleshia. Now, this was the first contact from Elleshia since Kendall had dropped the kids off before Thanksgiving. And what she said on this voicemail, it was majorly concerning. She didn't start it off by saying, we're safe, I'll explain later, don't worry about it, or I'm bringing them home, an explanation that everybody would have hoped for. But instead, Elleshia told Kurt that she had the kids and was in France, and that she planned to get permanent residency there, all without consent from the other 2 parents, the 2 fathers involved in this. Also without warning, and more importantly, too, without any plan to return. And what's really important to remember here is that even though it feels like all of this did happen big all at once because all of that information was learned so early on the same day, that really was not the case at all. Everyone was learning things just in pieces as they went. You have the babysitter's phone call to Kendall, the coworkers calling in a welfare check, the officers going to the house, finding nothing except that very weird notebook, that voicemail from Elleshia. I mean, all of these different things. And while, yes, they happened over the course of one day, they really happened bit by bit. So as the police continued digging into the details of where Elleshia and the kids went, one discovery shifted the entire investigation. They found Elleshia's car. And it wasn't abandoned on the side of a road. It wasn't at a friend's house or a family member's house. Not at all. It was just parked right there at the Salt Lake City International Airport. So that raised so many more questions. I mean, why would she be at the airport? Where could she be going? Was she really in France? Is that why she was parked there? Did she still have the kids with her? Also thinking through, was that even her? How do we know that it was even her who took the car to the airport? Were they being held against their will? Like, what is going on here? So the police had surveillance footage pulled, and they traced Elleshia's movements from the moment that she got there. And that footage finally showed in real time what was happening. Not only what was happening, but where she and the kids had truly gone. The video captured Elleshia walking very calmly through the airport on November 30th, 2025. She had all 4 of her children with her. She had her luggage in her hands, and they were boarding a one-way international flight out of Salt Lake City with a stop in Amsterdam to Croatia, not France, as she had said on that voicemail. And here's the part that makes this situation at the airport even more serious, because obviously we know that the kids' dads didn't consent to them leaving the state, let alone leaving the country. So for Elleshia to get the kids' passports, to get 4 children on an international flight, all of these moves without the father's consent, that means she would have needed to forge Kendall and Kurt's signatures on the passport paperwork. In other words, she went to great lengths to do this and would have had to commit a federal felony in the United States in order to make it happen. So with all of this new information, and now having proof that Elleshia and all 4 kids had left the country to Croatia, not France, Utah authorities issued an endangered and missing advisory for all 4 kids, officially classifying this as a parental abduction case. This was on December 10th, 2025. Now, this advisory had photos of all 4 kids, along with their names, ages, birthdays, and heights, and it also had a photo of Elleshia. And with Elleshia, just one word, kidnapper, in all capitals, big red letters right above her photo. Now, below her picture was her name, an alias that she goes by, her height, and just identifying details. Look, you've probably heard of an Amber Alert, but let me just explain. An endangered and missing advisory alert is a little bit different. It's a tool that Utah law enforcement uses when a child is considered missing and in danger, but the situation doesn't meet the strict criteria for an Amber Alert, often because information is limited or the criteria isn't fully met for one reason or another. So now, instead of flashing across highway signs and phones nationwide, these advisories really work through coordinated law enforcement, also different media channels to try to get the word out, getting the word out to other departments, to news outlets, to the public, in just a little bit different of a way and less, instantaneous sort of way. Yet I will say it has the same urgency. The advisory also opens the door for broader investigative support, including assistance from the FBI, which that's something that goes way beyond just a local welfare check or a routine missing persons file. And you have to think about that moment, right? Seeing as a father, as any parent, your children's faces on this advisory alert, seeing the word kidnapper above the mother who you once were married to, who you trusted with your children. It's so scary to think about, and every parent's absolute worst nightmare. Truly, it is. Now, in this case, the advisory was the point where everyone knew that the authorities weren't just concerned about Elleshia or are the kids okay, where are they, trying to locate them. This now meant that they were concerned that these kids were in real danger. But why? Because as far as anyone knew, until this point, Elleshia was just a normal mom from Utah. What could possibly drive her to take the kids out of the country without their father's consent? And the answer that kept coming up with this wasn't about custody disputes or financial troubles or retaliation or a secret plan to start over. It was something much, much bigger. Something, one could argue, almost biblical. And it is very reminiscent of Lori Vallow, also of Chad Daybell, of many people that we have talked about, but Elleshia believed that the world was ending. And not in a metaphorical, dramatic, or attention-seeking sort of way, but in a way that she genuinely believed and took seriously enough to uproot her whole life and to take her children, her life, everything halfway around the world. And as it turns out, Elleshia had been posting very strange, apocalyptic and religious content on social media in the months leading up to this, almost like a warning sign. The videos that she posted warned that the end of times were near and that catastrophic events would soon be happening, and very similar to Lori Vallow. Now, unlike Lori, she didn't believe, to my knowledge, that she was like one of the 144,000s that was gonna save the world or start the new world or whatever, but hell-bent on believing that the world was ending and this is the way to save your children or for salvation. Now, I gotta say, Kendall, her ex, and some of the children's father, he had absolutely no idea about these beliefs that she carried until after she disappeared. He said that he and Elleshia, yes, were both raised LDS, Mormon, but that he had left the religion quite some time ago. And that he also said he didn't know if she still was following the LDS faith. And I want to just make a quick clarification here. And just be very clear, we have talked about a lot of cases, unfortunately, involving people in the LDS community. And not every Mormon believes that the world is going to end in some catastrophic way or the doomsday. And maybe they believe it's going to end someday, yes. But there is a very small sect of these people that become radicalized. And they either think that they're the prophet, or they think that they are the chosen one, an enlightened being, doomsday this. And it's more of these radical beliefs. So I see LDS is getting a very bad rap out there the last probably 18 months, because unfortunately, a lot of cases are rooted in that faith. I'm thinking, Jodi Hildebrandt, Ruby Franke, Lori Vallow, of course, Chad Daybell, there are several. And it's not something that I guess it stems from LDS beliefs, but it's more of these people who are radicalized by it. So I've seen some things in the comment where people are bashing LDS a lot, and I just want to say it's not that whole religious group. It's certain people who take, extreme measures with it, okay? So like I said, Kendall used to be LDS, and he said that he wasn't sure if Elleshia still followed the LDS faith. He, along with many, many other people across the internet, actually did end up finding out that she thought that the world was ending through TikTok, of all platforms. And this is now what is being called her secret end times account. And on this TikTok account, Elleshia shared messages about the danger that was coming, warnings from the prophet that she was getting in her dreams, or that she was the prophet and she was getting these warnings, and just that she was preparing for major world-ending events. Friends and a former boyfriend told the police that she had, in the weeks before fleeing, spoken too about getting passports and leaving the country because of these concerns about the end of the world coming. Literally biblical events unfolding that would make staying in the United States just unsafe for her and her family. And like I said, we do hear about this quite a bit. I mean, think again, Lori Vallow, Ruby Franke, those kinds of situations where these very bizarre end times beliefs seem to start just kind of sparking out of nowhere, but then consuming every part of their mind. And those are very similar to the kinds of beliefs that Elleshia had, and the ones that she posted on her social media for everyone to see. And when you see the parallels between some of those unfortunately now infamous, just tragic cases and what happened to the children in those cases, Kendall, the father, and her ex, of course, naturally feared that this may have been the way that their situation was going to end up as well.
I'm just trying to find the kids. I just want them back and I want them safe. She's saying that this is God warning her and warning other people that they need to get out and prepare for a nuclear winter or leave the country.
What's your reaction when you hear her saying stuff like that?
I mean, in the dark recesses of my mind, the biggest fear that this is something like a Lori Daybell situation. I hope that that's not the case.
Now listen, there are over 3 hours worth of videos on her TikTok, mostly about the same thing, this is the end of the world, doomsday theory, all of these things, but a few that really stood out to people talked about different things like planes falling out of the sky, a massive power outage, an earthquake that was coming. And in a lot of these videos, she also then pushes the boundary a little further, saying she, quote, had another dream about it. Revelations in the Bible, different things like that. And honestly, they're kind of concerning.
Hey y'all, I had a dream last night and this dream repeated a few times. I woke up a few times and it kept replaying every time I fell back asleep. And I feel that this is urgent. This dream was about an EMP going off. I heard the sound, like the blast that it makes. And as soon as that happened, the car stopped driving, computer stopped working, all electronics were down, Wi-Fi was down, water was down, the airplanes fell from the sky, helicopters fell from the sky, and there was no heat, no cooling. Everybody had to walk home from work. And it was like in the middle of winter and it was freezing. There was ice on the ground. There was some snow on the ground. And as my dream progresses, people have no food, they have no water, they're freezing, and people are not surviving. They're not making it. And every time this dream restarted, I would hear that blast and I just knew instantly that it was an EMP. And it was like the world had stopped. We were thrown back into an ice age. A couple nights ago, I had a dream about an earthquake, and I have not been able to sleep since. In this dream, I was waking up in my dream, and the earthquake, it started off small, but in seconds, it got really big. Things are falling off, the ceiling, the windows are cracking, the doors are cracking, the ceiling is cracking. I get my kids, we run out the building, and the building is coming down. Pieces of the building are coming down. And I see the carports coming down. The street is splitting. The cars are shifting. The light posts and the power lines are coming down too. I remember when I woke up, I had the feeling that it was just around the corner. And I honestly thought it was going to happen a couple nights ago. I was not able to fall back asleep. And when I did, I was asleep for like an hour before I had to get up again. A word to the wise, a word to the people, a word to TikTok, I guess you want to call it that. Repent, turn towards your Savior, and whatever anger, hurt you have, give it to Him, and don't ask for it back. Move forward. If you are sinning, turn away, repent, ask Him for what you need to repent for, and He will tell you. And don't do it again. There's going to be a lot of devastation coming, a lot. And I have to tell you, that earthquake I've stocked up on some things, and I just hope that I don't have to use any of it. But I know that the Lord works in miraculous ways, and He will take care of His people. So repent and turn towards Him. He loves you.
In another video, she talks about how Yellowstone erupted and how it destroyed the entire United States, which, I gotta be honest, it's kind of some kooky stuff here, but she goes into a lot of detail when she's talking about these dreams, about these messages and these visions that she is apparently having.
So this is part 2 of the dream that I had last night, and I had that today. In this dream, it has like the same setup. So I'm on one side, I'm sitting in front of it's like a big map of flat Earth, right? It's just, I could see all the continents, I could see the countries, I can see all of it, right? And on the other side, I see God. And as he's saying there, I see his hands and he points to Utah. And I said, what am I looking at here? And he points to Utah again, and I see that there's a big crack right down Utah. And as the crack goes up to Salt Lake, I see that Salt Lake is completely destroyed. There is not much left of it. And I see this big map, and I look up and I said, what am I looking at here? And then he points to the west, and I see Oregon, Washington, Southern Canada, and then Northern California. And there's smoke coming from it, and it's completely destroyed. And I could sense that a lot of casualties had happened. Okay. And I said again, what am I looking at here? So he points to the map again, but then he points to the southern part of the United States, and I see Arizona, Nevada, I see Texas, Louisiana, and Florida, and they're gone. It looked like they had been wiped out by flood and by earthquakes, okay? I look at the map again and I said, what am I looking at here? And he points to the east, and all of it is covered in white ash and snow. And I looked at this map, and I'm seeing like there's destruction everywhere, and I finally noticed that this was after Yellowstone had erupted, that this was the ending result of it. And as I look at this map, he had pointed to Utah again, and he follows like this trail all the way down to like the bottom part of the United States, and he goes up, right? He goes up into Missouri. And I said, what am I looking at here? And he points to it again, and as I look at Missouri, it was as if nothing had happened to it. Like nothing. There was no floods or earthquakes. It was just as if it had been protected or something. And as I'm looking at this, I'm seeing that, I guess I'm remembering that in my dream of last night, he had been lifting up the bucket over Yellowstone. That was the one that he had been grabbing and reaching for. And I realized that as he had lifted up that bucket, he had taken it off of Yellowstone, that when Yellowstone had erupted, it had caused all of this disaster, like all of this chaos. And when I had like seen like this end result, I had like the thought come to my head. It was Revelations, I want to say it was Revelations 14, and it says that the great Babylon has been taken down. That's a paraphrase, by the way, just not word for word. But it talks about how the United States is Babel, and it has been taken down.
Again, we have seen this before. Now, as you probably know, TikTok is a platform that is full of all kinds of people, different communities, different movements, theories, jokes, dance challenges, life hacks, you name it, but also people who are genuinely scared about the end of the world. In fact, the phrase rapture talk actually took off in late 2025 as people were sharing their own warnings that the end of the world was coming. However, most of these videos were just commentary, speculation, or religious discussion, whereas Elleshia's were different, according to the people who saw them after all of this happened. Because her videos didn't just talk about her beliefs in some sort of abstract sense. They predicted collapse. They warned of mass destruction. They urged, preparedness. And when nobody in her life was talking back or pushing against these ideas, the voice in those videos became the only one in her world, in her mind. Elleshia totally and completely believed that the end of the world was coming, and that these messages that she was getting were warnings to leave the United States before it was completely destroyed. So to her, this wasn't just a theory. It was her full belief system. And if you truly believe that the world is about to fall apart and you believe in that so strongly that you're willing to break court orders, forge documents, and take your kids across the entire world, then this stops being about custody. This becomes about survival in your mind, right? So then now suddenly that notebook that was left behind with reminders about shredding papers, throwing away phones, photos, and grabbing passports, it doesn't look like random feverish scribblings trying to go off the grid anymore. It looks more like someone who is prepared with a lot of forethought about, getting ready to disappear because they think that what's coming cannot be stopped. And that one-way ticket, the voicemail about moving permanently, the flights to Europe, those weren't just travel plans. They were pieces of a story that Elleshia was telling herself, a story about where her safety was and where danger wasn't. And it was later discovered that friends and a former boyfriend ended up coming forward to the police, saying that in the weeks leading up to her kidnapping the kids and leaving the country, she had in fact spoken about getting those passports for them and fleeing. So this really did solidify the idea that Elleshia had fully planned this out. Lots of preparation, lots of thought, and that's when things really started to progress. It was also revealed that as part of that note that Elleshia left behind about shredding documents and getting a burner phone and all of that she had also written down one of these messages. Kendall said that she, quote, left behind a note dictating a delusional message from God, a message promising her that she would be in Italy by Christmas. Now, what that means, we don't know for sure. We can't know for sure. But we can assume that it was her version of, a promised land, something that she believed that she was being sent to, or somewhere she was being sent to save her life and the kids' lives. Now, how she ended up in Croatia versus that, I don't know, that's a bit confusing, but some reports say that she ended up meeting a woman on the internet who shared similar beliefs. And because of that, she went to Croatia to live with that woman. And this hasn't been confirmed by court records or by official reports, I want to be clear, but allegedly this woman also had a 13-year-old son, and they too were from America originally. And this is going to be a very important detail for later on, so just hang on to that for a second. Now, fast forward to December 15th, almost 2 weeks after the kids were officially reported as missing, and prosecutors in Salt Lake County formally filed 4 felony charges against Elleshia. 1 count of custodial interference for each child. Because under Utah law, removing or retaining a child in violation of custody rights is classified as a 3rd-degree felony, meaning this wasn't just a family court issue now. It was going to be a criminal case. Now, that same day that these charges were brought against Elleshia, a judge also issued a no-bail arrest warrant for Elleshia, meaning that if and when she was found, she can be immediately taken into custody, and that she will not be given the option for bond. Because obviously, you're a flight risk, right? Look at what happened. Look at the track record. A temporary emergency protective order was also signed, so that suspended her custodial rights while the investigation completely, continues to unfold. And at this point, the FBI had also formally joined the investigation. And authorities have said that if this state warrant were to be elevated to a federal arrest warrant, that's when this case could really break wide open. Because that's what allows international alerts to go out, and it opens the door to global law enforcement, including potentially through Interpol, which, we know she's, gone international at this point. So in other words, that's when this would stop just being a US case and it would become an international one. So as the days went on, the efforts to find these kids continued. And a few days later, on December 17th, Kendall ended up launching a GoFundMe campaign, not for legal fees, but instead to be able to physically go get his kids once they are found. Because he was not going to give up hope, he was going to be optimistic and believe that they were returning home. He even wrote that this would be the best case scenario so that the kids would feel much safer and so that they wouldn't have to suffer as much wondering what's going to happen to them, what's going to happen to their mom and their future, which makes a lot of sense. Because if you listen to that part alone, it kind of feels like a gut punch and just for me, makes me incredibly sad because he makes it so clear on his GoFundMe that Elleshia abducted these kids, that she did not have permission to take them. And so for him to say, once they're found, I want, not only to be able to go get them and bring them home, but I don't want them to be scared. if she is apprehended with this no bond order that was issued, I don't want them, because they're so young, being fearful of like, well, what's going to happen to us? We're in a country we're not familiar with. Where's mommy going? And it's just like, again, I've said it before, it's every parent's worst nightmare. It's like you want to hold out hope, but then it's like, even in the best case scenario, there still is so much damage and trauma that is happening, and it's awful. Now, for almost a month, there were no new updates, no media posting about this case. I mean, nothing. It was almost like it had gone radio silent. But on January 21st, 2026, something happened that nobody was expecting. A Facebook post was made by a family member of the kids, their aunt, Jill Seymour. And this is where people finally started having a little bit more hope after such a long period of no updates. Because this post, it indicated that the kids had been found. They weren't back at home. They weren't in Utah. They weren't even in the United States, but they were found. They were still in Croatia, in a state-run children's center, which is kind of like not a foster group home, or orphanage, but something like that. And Jill said that she, Kendall, and Kendall's fiance had been there for 5 days, waiting to get the kids. But it was clear this was going to be a fight. It was going to be a challenge. The family was consistently, just continuously having to jump through legal hoops. They had talked with Croatian authorities, local police, social services, the U.S. Embassy, Interpol, attorneys, all sorts of agencies, just to get these kids released into their care. I mean, documents had to be translated from English to Croatian and back again. Court-approved lawyers had to be hired. I mean, they're just completely navigating a system that none of them have ever had to deal with before. And it was extremely challenging. It wasn't just like, oh, great, we found them. They have to go through the proper legal channels and the paperwork. And Jill painted the picture of just how complicated this was. It was not going to be just a quick paperwork fix. Every single day has been a battle. And even when they were finally allowed to see the children, it wasn't much. Only a couple of hours each day under the watch of the center's staff. Just a glimpse, a moment, a reminder, truly, of what they had once thought they lost and what they were now still in this battle to get back.
How are you and the kids doing?
We're holding up the best we can in the circumstances that we're stuck in, trying to enjoy the little time that we do have together.
So talk to me a little bit about that. You are getting some access to the kids. Describe what the parameters are.
Yeah, so they're in a children's center. Nothing like this really exists in the States. We have foster care where kids go into homes. All the kids here are in one large home. So we are allowed to visit them for 2 hours a day. There is one social worker there that speaks a decent amount of English. She's there sometimes, most of the time she's not. So a lot of the workers that we're trying to communicate with speak in very, very broken English, and so it's hard to get more time with them.
Like, how are the kids communicating if the kids speak English and the workers do not? How are they?
Exactly. That's one of the biggest problems, is that there isn't clear communication, and the kids aren't able to communicate, especially how kids communicate with an adult that doesn't speak much language. And Jacob, the 3-year-old, is having the hardest time with that.
And so I imagine that the 11-year-old's name is Landon. Is the 11-year-old sort of taking the lead for his siblings and trying to...
Funny enough, Levi, he's 8. He is kind of the ringleader of the group and takes that father role responsibility.
I can't imagine what these little guys are going through. Thank God, by the way, that you can see them for 2 hours a day.
Yes.
Because some of the guidance that we'd learned was that there's no contact. And what about their dad, Kenny? Has he had a chance to spend as much time as possible?
Yes, we were able to see them, for that full 2 hours each day. Sometimes it's definitely tempting to try and push that a little longer. But when the social worker is there, she'll come in right at the 2 hours marks and ask us to leave.
It's maddening.
It's so frustrating. And that's where I think this limited amount of time that we're able to have with the kids and consistently saying goodbye every single day after such a brief amount is causing quite a lot of trauma with the kids.
I think so. And you're hopefully being able to reassure them, we are back tomorrow. This is going to be over soon. This is temporary. They are understanding this.
Yes, they understand that for the most part, that they know that we're going to be back the next day and that we'll see them. But they're not understanding the concept of how long this is taking and why. And of course, you don't want to share all of the information with the children. And so it's just really hard. The biggest concern we have is with sharing information with them is we want to share as accurate information as we can at a child level. But at the same time, they have been lied to for the last 2 months by their mom. And so we don't want to come across like we're withholding anything from them. We want to communicate clearly, but not over communicate to a child.
The family member also described this children's center specifically, saying that it was in fact more like an orphanage rather than a home, a place where the kids were bored, where they were begging to leave, and the city itself was beautiful, but they were inside this home. They couldn't leave. And it also didn't erase the fact that these were 4 American kids who were trapped in a foreign system, just waiting until they got to go home, to be with their father, to be with the familiarity of their surroundings, their home, their friends. It's like they've been plucked into like the unknown. And now, even though they're seeing their family members a few hours a day, they're being told that they're going to stay there until they can like sort things out. It's awful. And it's like a different level scale, but I'm going to just like make this reference, even though it's totally different circumstances. But it kind of reminds me of that movie Broke Down Palace. I don't know if you guys ever saw it. It's with Claire Danes and Kate Beckinsale, and they go to Thailand. And it's like it has to do drug smuggling and all these things, but they're stuck in the Thai system. They don't speak the language. It's different politics. It's all sorts of things. And so obviously totally different things going on between those two examples, but I'm bringing it up as a reference because imagine that. Imagine you're plucked from everything you know, placed in a country where you don't speak the language very well, you aren't familiar with your surroundings. Thank God the kids have each other to lean on. I mean, can you imagine if they didn't have one another and if they were separated? But seeing your mom being arrested and not knowing what's happening or what is going on, and who knows what beliefs had been planted in their heads as well, and if they thought they were truly in danger this whole time. The good news is the kids are safe. The good news is that they are together. They're eating, sleeping, they're accounted for, and they were found. And for Kendall and the rest of the family, that's what mattered the most. They still would fight for every minute of access, every piece of paper, every legal step until the children were back home where they belonged. But this battle to get the kids back, it was far from over. But at this point, for the first time since they were taken by their mother, there was a thread of certainty. So then on January 25th, Kendall took to the GoFundMe campaign to confirm that the 4 kids had been found in Croatia. Although the aunt had already posted about it, he directly was now confirming it. And he didn't sugarcoat it. They were still far from home, and there was still a long process to go through before they could come home. And Kendall even outlined some additional steps that they had to take to get the kids back. Specifically, he says that they have to hire Croatian lawyers who specialize in child abduction and create and submit Hague Convention applications. They have to hire court-approved translators and extend their stay by an unknown amount of time while they sort all of this out. They're going through all the proper channels to get these kids released from government custody in Croatia. Now, the Hague Convention on the civil aspects of international child abduction isn't just a line in a legal textbook. It's actually the tool that parents like Kendall can use when their kids have been taken across borders without permission. Think of it almost as an international return order, but for children. It gives a legal pathway to get them back to the country where they actually live. But it's not a simple process. Filing a Hague application actually means proving that the kids were taken without consent. It also forces you to navigate a foreign legal system that, you've never stepped foot in. And it requires a lot of coordination between the US and Croatian authorities. It's all those things we've already talked about that they are actively doing. So even with the children located, the road ahead is anything but simple or smooth. The Hague process alone could take months, and that's just the legal side. I mean, every application, every hearing, every translation, every call to a foreign court, it just chips away at the time that these kids are still away from home. And then there's, of course, still the big unknown in all of this. What's going to happen to Elleshia? That information hasn't been confirmed by authorities yet. However, according to Jill Seymour, she has in fact been arrested and she is currently in custody in Croatia, awaiting a court date. But really quick, let's go back. Remember how I mentioned that there was a woman that Elleshia supposedly met online and that she went to go live with her in Croatia? She had a 13-year-old son. Well, apparently, and again, this part is all alleged at this point, but that woman's son was the reason that Elleshia even got arrested in the first place. Apparently, this 13-year-old searched one of Elleshia's kids' names on the internet and found all of the US headlines saying that the kids had been abducted. So he then shared those articles with his mom, then shared them in a group chat with his mom and Elleshia, and from there, it just started to unravel. We really don't know the exact order of events that caused the arrest, but reports do say that this boy was kind of like the whistleblower. And imagine carrying that weight as a 13-year-old child, but thank God he did the right thing, right? Unfortunately, his mom was also allegedly arrested, and in the GoFundMe update that Kendall had posted on January 25th, he mentions a 5th American child who is also at the orphanage. So I think the assumption is that this 5th child, although not confirmed, is allegedly the 13-year-old boy. So Kendall said that they want to be able to help him as well, but that process will be much more complicated and extensive because he doesn't even have rights to this child. But imagine that. It's like you're trying to do the right thing and help these kids as a child yourself, and it's a double-edged sword because you want to do the right thing, but then now your mom is allegedly arrested and now you are going into this orphanage as well and you're being ripped away from your family. It's such a difficult choice that would have to be made, and who knows if he even knew in that moment what he was truly choosing and, what events were about to unfold once he made that public. I don't know. For Kendall and the rest of the family, the uncertainty of the whole situation is just exhausting, physically, mentally, and emotionally. But even here, at least now we know that the kids are safe. And as hard as the process is, there's one thing that is certain in all of this. Every lawyer hired, every application submitted, every translator brought on board, it is one step closer toward bringing these kids home. And that's what matters in all of this. Not the chaos, not the noise, not the unanswered questions. What matters is moving forward. Step by step, call by call, paper by paper, and fighting through the confusion, through all of the red tape, and through any fear. Because on the other side of all of that is the only thing that counts, these 4 children. So even with possible months ahead, with hearings and foreign courts, and with so many questions still left unanswered, Kendall and Kurt know exactly what they are fighting for. They're fighting for the return of their children. And every step is difficult. Every decision obviously matters, and every day counts, because every day that goes by without these kids returning home is one more day of trauma that they are going to have to live with, cope with, and deal with in their future. This story obviously isn't over, not even close. There's no neat little ending where we can tie it up and, put a little bow on it. It still is unfolding, and it is still very messy and awful. But for the first time in months, there's at least a little bit of control in the chaos. The kids are safe, and now they just need to come home. That's the fight. That's what's important. And nobody in that family is going to stop fighting until those kids are back where they belong. So we will see what happens. We will see what happens with Elleshia if she's extradited. At the time of this recording, no other updates have happened. We will see how long of a process it really takes to get these kids home. And here's what I'm going to say. I am never going to knock anybody for their religious beliefs. Everybody is entitled to, to have their own beliefs, think what they want. But if you start noticing anything on social media or with a friend or at school or wherever it is, where somebody is actively talking about the end of times and children are involved in this, whether they are possessed beings or whether people are talking about fleeing with them to protect them, just raise your hand and just say something to somebody, because none of us know when the world is going to end, obviously. Although my argument to that is it's probably not going to happen in this lifetime. So if you're hearing somebody talk about the world ending and getting prepared for that, it's one thing to have a go bag in your house, okay? Fine, fair. It's a whole nother thing to be fleeing with children and getting passports and forging signatures, putting children in danger because of that. And who knows what would have happened had that 13-year-old boy not been brave enough to say something after Googling the kids' names. Could this have ended up like a Lori Vallow situation? I would imagine that when the walls feel like they're closing in, that's when you get desperate. And who knows? I'm not saying that she was absolutely going to hurt her children. Certainly not. I don't want to imply that. But like when people are backed into a corner, that is when they become unpredictable. And that is a scary place to live in. So we will continue watching as this unfolds. If there have been any updates since the time of this recording, we will include them in the episode description. But let me know too, have you been following this case? What have you heard about this? Do you think it would have ended up like a Lori Vallow situation? And how common is this? How common is it that people think that they are getting messages from God and that they're the prophet and that it's the end of the world and they have to take these drastic measures? I mean, literally, it's never crossed my mind even once. But then again, I don't know. I'm a religious person, but it's never crossed my mind. So maybe I'm just, not the one that he's choosing to talk to. Who knows? This just has all sorts of red flags on it for me. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for listening. Until the next case, stay safe. Bye.